Pre-order my book in the description below. For those of you who aren't aware, I have recently declared war on Did You Know Gaming's contributor Liam Robertson for issuing a copyright takedown request on my video making fun of his Donkey Kong rumor thing that he put out. Obviously, if you don't know who Liam Robertson is, he is a leaker, the stereotype that everyone always makes fun of, someone who posits obviously fake Nintendo rumors for clicks and attention, right? You can't have someone come out and make fun of you for your fake Nintendo leaks when you're going into the next console generation. And I do think that's what this is all about, why this is happening now. Because I have been seeing a huge uptick of fake Nintendo rumors, but unlike with the last couple of console generations, people aren't taking them seriously anymore. People aren't respecting them. There's a very long history of these individuals making stuff up. And I would argue, in part because of my efforts, Liam Robertson is known as being the absolute worst of the worst, right up there with Emily Rogers. Right? So to see him coming out and trying to do this song and dance again, years and years after being exposed, is laughable to me. So I thought I would take a little bit of time to go back and tell you all the history of this guy and why you shouldn't take him seriously and just how insane the fake Nintendo community actually is, right? So all of this goes back to, honestly, even back to the Wii era. Right? There were all of these stories coming out from these minor Nintendo blogs about how we would get Resident Evil 5 someday on Nintendo Wii, how RE4 was too successful not to port 5 over to Nintendo consoles at some point. There was this very big push from the online gaming community to try and make it out to be as if Nintendo was doing something wrong. Right. There was a big push against the hardware power and the third-party support. Nobody talked about the good games that were coming out in the console. Right. It was all just gloom and doom. It was a narrative. And from that atmosphere, from that vibe, came the original Nintendo leakers. People who rose to prominence through NeoGAF and similar websites that promoted themselves as being insiders that knew about the inner workings of Nintendo, right? So of course you had people like Emily Rogers, you had Liam Robertson, you had Super Metal Dave 64, you had all of these people start up this weird online cabal, this community of people just trying to get Nintendo news ahead of the rest of the gaming industry, right? And occasionally they would get something right. So for example, Paper Mario Color Splash, right? Paper Mario for Wii U. A Japanese interview with Nintendo confirmed that it was in production for the console at one point. However, the news never formally made its way to the West, right? So what Emily Rogers did was that she simply saw the interview and then pushed it through her platform as being insider information, when in reality it was publicly available information that just wasn't available in English, right? So with these occasional gold nuggets of occasional just being right on the money, these guys came out and really created this image of themselves as being the go-to individuals for Nintendo news, right? They knew everything that was going on in the companies. They knew the partners, they knew what was in development, and especially over the past several years, they knew what was being canceled, right? This is the thing that really gets me, and this is what the Donkey Kong video was about, was this alleged Donkey Kong project that was canceled by Nintendo for whatever reason, right? This is the trend you always see with these contributors, is that they release a statement about some project that was canceled that never went into production, never got past the pitch phase, was never really an active development thing. But they're still going to make a video about it. They're still going to make a video pretending as if oh man, look at Nintendo canceling all these great creative projects from all this Western talent. Look at what they did to Factor 5's Kid Icarus, right? Look at what they did with Donkey Kong. Look at what they did with Star Fox Grand Prix, right? There was this very, very big push to kind of Project Hammer, right? That was a big one, right? There was this very, very big push to kind of create this community of people who just relentlessly hated on Nintendo for canceling all these projects, right? But the reality is quite different, right? The reality is that like these projects either never existed, never got past the pitch phase, never really like entered any real kind of productive sense. Like they're not canceled, right? If you don't get like a significant way into production, right? To me, like the leakers always came off as like very dishonest and disingenuous, right? They always try to make these projects seem like some grand spectacular thing that just never came to be. But in reality, like if these projects existed at all, they were canceled for good reason, right? Project Hammer, I think, being a very, very good example. But this kind of storyline, these kind of narratives, they kind of fall flat. Like again, the big thing that drives me nuts about these people is their insistence that they have insider sources at Nintendo, and that means that they supposedly have information as to Nintendo's upcoming software and hardware. Right? We saw this in 2016 with Emily Rogers' infamous, like, oh, Mother 3 is going to get re-released in the West on the Wii U for the 10th anniversary. Didn't happen, right? You know, there was that narrative like that these people tried pushing that like Star Fox Zero was going to get delayed for a second time because the controls were so broken. Didn't happen, right? There was that like rumor that Endless Ocean 3 was going to be a launch title for Wii U. Didn't happen, right? Like again, there were all these like weird stories over the years that came out, were pushed, were promoted, and occasionally they would overshadow real news when it comes to these kind of games, right? Like I can tell you how frustrating it was going into the Star Fox Zero release. You know, in a release I had been anticipating since Star Fox 64, right? A real sequel to it, and seeing all these people crying about the controls, about how the controls were completely broken, and how like all these weird insiders like claiming that everybody at Nintendo hated the controls other than Miyamoto, which is obviously not true. But there was like this weird agenda to try and ruin certain games from these people, right? You know, Devil's Third is probably like the most prominent example, but there were lots of really weird situations like that. And things have like changed considerably in 2024, right? The main thing I think NeoGAF has done, right? Now that NeoGAF is done and like X is a little bit more like a little bit more neutral ground. Like all of these stories have difficulty reaching their audience the way they used to. Like the way it used to work is that Emily Rogers would like tweet something vague on Reset Era, and then people would freak out about it, like, oh man, we're gonna get the Switch Pro this year, we're gonna get this, or we're gonna get that. Like that used to be how it worked. Like, Reset Era or NeoGAF would like freak out about something that like someone said, and then it would like make its way into the internet to the point where like people didn't know where the story originally came from, right? But now it's a bit more well known how this works. We know a little bit about how the process gets started. We know the people who are like willing to push these fake stories, who are willing to do damage control for fake stories. Remember when like Pokemon Stars was a thing? How it was going to be like an updated like version of Pokemon Sun and Moon for the Switch, right? And how it was going to be like have all these unique features and stuff like that. Like, oh, never happened. Oh, it was canceled in development. Okay, but that's not how Nintendo operates, right? So you're telling me they put all this effort in developing like a third version of Sun and Moon, decided to cancel it, and then release like like Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon instead, which were like nothing like what was described initially, right? Like again, like these kind of situations kept being pushed, being promoted, being huge news, only to like end up being proven wrong over and over and over and over and over again, right? And considering like X is neutral ground, and moderators weren't removing content like they were on Reset Era and NeoGAF, right? People were more adequately able to point to the people responsible for these situations. And as a result of that, more and more people began to realize that the Nintendo leak community was absolutely full of it, right? They had no idea what they were talking about. They were making it all up, and their audience was eating it all up and spitting it back out onto the rest of us, right? And where we're at now is that these kind of stories are still getting released. They're still like doing well among their audience, but the vast majority of the Nintendo audience is sick and tired of this, right? We're sick of hearing about the Switch Pro and like canceled Nintendo products and people trying to make Nintendo look like the bad guy. Like it's just something that has just become kind of a meme at this point. And yet like this is what Liam Robertson does. Like, this is all he's been doing for the past 20 years of his life. Like, trying to convince people that, like, oh, I have, like, real contacts at Nintendo. Like, sure you do, bro. Sure you do. It's laughable, to say the least. But, it'll definitely be interesting seeing like how the situation evolves from here, because Emily Rogers backed out of the industry some time ago. Like, she doesn't do this anymore. She retired from the leaking community, probably because she understood where it was going. But Liam Robertson is still at it. He's still trying to push himself as this Nintendo insider, and I really don't think this is gonna work. Like, I do think that him coming after a parody video is not the best look for him. I do think like this is the kind of thing that should be mocked and derided. Like, I don't think censoring someone's opinion on your content is really going to make you look like some endearing individual, that you're some daring journalist who's like exposing all the deep dark secrets of Nintendo. Like, I don't think that way at all. Like, I think this was a bad move on his part. I really do. So we'll see how things develop from here, but let it be known that I do not like, trust, or respect the Nintendo leak community.